The views expressed on the following program do not necessarily reflect the views of Money Radio staff, management, or advertisers, and do not represent an offer to buy or sell any securities. Some interviews heard on this program may be sponsored by the participants. It's time for Health Futures with Cypress Home Care Solutions, Bob Roth. This is Arizona's only show dedicated to providing you with expert advice on how to live a longer, healthier, and happier life. To learn more, call 602-264-8009. That's 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Bob Roth.
Good afternoon. You're listening to Health Futures, taking stock in you. Of course, I'm your host, Bob Roth, and it must be Friday, and indeed it is. It is Friday, October 2nd, our first Friday of October, and we're coming at you live from the Money Radio studios here in the Scottsdale Air Park. We're at 1510 AM, 105.3 FM, and the World Wide Web, moneyradio1510.com. If this is the first time you have dialed into our show is about how our older adult population can live a healthier, happier life. And how do we do this? We do this by bringing extraordinary guests to the show. So if you want to hear some of the shows that we've been bringing to you almost for 8 years, go out to our website, cypresshomecare.com. Click on the media button. Third button down is radio show, and you'll catch about almost 400 shows. So, as I said, what makes our show is our guests, and today is no different. We have an extraordinary guest. For some reason, it's like every 2.5 years she comes to the show, and we need to change that and have her come more frequently. But this is her third time here. She was here originally in September of 2015, last in April of 2018, and here it is, October 2nd, 2020. Stephanie Bivens, welcome back to the show. Good to have you.
Thank you, Bob. Great to be here.
So Stephanie has a law firm. It's Bivens and Associates, and they specialize in estate planning, probate, trust administration, elder law, and special needs planning. And you've been doing this a while, and I've had the privilege of knowing you almost the entire time I've been in the healthcare space for the last 18 years. And you're kind of a fixture in our community. You have mentored a lot of great attorneys, and you've got a great practice of your own, too. And it's so good to have you here on the show. And, here we are in this unusual time.
Yes.
This is called pandemic. And, I would love for you just to take our audience a little bit about your practice and really how have things changed, because you have had to adapt to the changes that have occurred as a result of this pandemic.
Yeah, absolutely, Bob. And I'm glad you described everything that we do, because we are a niche law firm and we're really unusual. As you were
an unusual person,
to,
right?
Yes. And as you've alluded to, I've been at this a long time. I like to say that I'm the dinosaur of elder law attorneys now in Arizona. I've been in practice for a little over 23 years, and most of that time I've been in these practice areas: estate planning, probate, trust administration, elder law, and special needs. So what we do, like any estate planning firm, is we help our clients and their families plan their legacies. When a loved one dies, we also walk the family through the process of administering the estate, either through probate or through trust administration or non-probate transfer, like any estate planning firm does. But what's really unique about us is our elder law practice. And I am a certified elder law attorney. There are fewer still than 600 of us throughout the entire country still. And
you were one of the first here in our state.
Yeah.
I remember when you did that and you got that designation.
Yeah. So, what's nice about the elder law area is at the heart of it, no matter what we're doing for our clients and their loved ones that are supporting the older relative, we're just helping clients achieve better personal, financial, and medical outcomes. So whether we're walking a family through the process of figuring out how they're going to pay for long-term care, what type of care they're going to need, who's going to be the advocate, do they need government benefits to financially pay for that care or not, when the adult children have to start taking on a more active role. We represent oftentimes the adult children in their capacity as trustee or agent for mom, dad, grandma, grandpa. And so we're really tied in to the community and with all of the senior service providers. So oftentimes I joke that I'm the quarterback of the elder law team, and we can bring in resources, and it's a nice holistic practice to help achieve best outcomes. That's the whole goal.
Sure. And what's interesting to me, especially when it comes to elder law, and I know this because we've been in the business now for about 26 years, and you talked about the adult children. Sometimes you represent them, but I would imagine that a lot of times you get engaged, and we just had a conversation just yesterday. You get engaged by the adult child who says, hey, you know what? I need your assistance with my mom or my dad or both of them. I would imagine a lot of times you get contacted by the adult child.
Yes.
But the engagement is actually with their folks, and you that becomes a slippery slope. And you say to someone like Bob, who's brought maybe his parents in, say, I appreciate you bringing them in, but I don't represent you, I represent them. So I mean that's something you have to do as an attorney.
Absolutely. Yeah. We, every day it sort of feels like a law school essay exam. Who's the client? Who's your ethical duty to? Right. So we have to set very clear expectations and boundaries, and make sure that, if the parent is going to be the client, does the client want us? Do they authorize us to communicate with their relatives? And in what fashion? Is it everybody? Is it only one person? Is it only a certain scope of what's going on? Or is it no communication? So, yeah, that's a really important piece of what we do. Sometimes we'll end up representing only one spouse of the couple. Sometimes we'll represent both spouses, depending on the nature of the representation. So it can get a little tricky, but we seem to navigate that pretty well.
Well, we are in different times right now, but I would imagine you've been doing this long enough that, we're approaching Thanksgiving and soon to be Christmas. And I would imagine that is a time of year where you guys get busy because family members come together, especially a destination like Arizona. And you got the adult children who come in town for Thanksgiving, and they're sitting across the table from their parents, aunt and uncle, grandparents, and I like to say they've had this oh crap moment. It's like they haven't seen mom or dad since Easter. And you know what? 7 months is a long time and a lot can happen. So is that true? Do you get really busy this time of year where people have this aha moment and say, oh crap, what do we do now?
Yeah, we do receive quite a few urgent phone calls during the holidays, and certainly in January. Everybody sort of gets through the holidays, realizes maybe mom and dad are not thriving the way that they should be any longer. They're starting to experience physical challenges, mobility issues, safety issues in the home, or cognitive impairment, short-term memory decline. And so, during the holidays, that's when the crises will happen. And then the stuff that isn't a crisis, sort of in January, New Year, the family's going to tackle issues, make resolutions, get things organized. So we always see a big uptick in estate planning in January. It's a great New Year's resolution. If you haven't had it looked at in a while, make that a New Year's resolution. You can absolutely achieve that one this year, right? And boy, aren't we all looking forward to New Year's. Could 2020 be over soon enough, Bob? But
do you think anybody out there is saying, you know what, I hope next year is going to be as good a year as 2020?
I don't know of anybody. And it's been really hard, in particular, on our older population, obviously, with the coronavirus pandemic. Seniors, persons with secondary health issues are just at higher risk. Right before driving to the studio today, Bob, I got off the phone with a client. She has not seen her husband in 8 months. He has Parkinson's, and it's very difficult for him to verbally communicate over the phone. So even though they can communicate by phone, facilitated by his adult care home staff, she's thrilled. She's going to see him in about 20 minutes at 1 o'clock today. Yesterday, I talked to people that are going to see their mom also today for the first time.
First time in like 7 months.
7 to 8 months, Bob. It's been so socially isolating and emotionally difficult for families, let alone the legal hurdles if they didn't have their estate planning documents in place, powers of attorneys and trusts. We've had a plethora of cases where we've had to go to court to get authority for people to do things because we can't get powers of attorney in place, or it's too late. Somebody became sick, too ill with the virus. This virus really has had real world impact, particularly on our senior population.
Well, and I also think that it's really exposed the chinks in the armor of the senior care world. I mean, especially communal living. And,
Yes.
you know, Stephanie, social isolation was a problem prior to the pandemic. And this has just made things way worse. And, you know, we got many aging adults that are not seeing, like you described, their loved ones. And the crazy thing is that you can send housekeeping in, you can send cooks in, you can send caregivers in, but you can't let the family members in. So I'm glad to hear that we're seeing some changes.
Yeah.
You've been listening to Health Futures. We're down one segment. We got 3 more to go. I got Stephanie Bivens in the house. She is the principal of Bivens and Associates, and we are talking estate planning law, elder law, and many other things. So stick around. We'll be right back.
Now back to Health Futures, taking stock in you. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Cypress Home Care Solutions, Bob Roth.
Welcome back. You're listening to Health Futures, taking stock in you. I'm your host, Bob Roth, and if you're just tuning in, I've got Stephanie Bivens here in the studio. She's got a law firm called Bivens and Associates, and they've been at it for over 20 years, making a difference in the lives of the people that they serve. They do estate planning, they do probate, trust administration, elder law, and special needs planning. And you know, we had a really good conversation in our first segment. If you missed it, please go out to our website at cypresshomecare.com. Click on the media button, third button down is radio show, and you'll catch that and many others. So when we left off, we were talking about estate planning, and you said that, you know, at the beginning of the year is a great time to do it. Elder law, estate planning, special needs trust, probate, you do so many things, and you yet do them very, very well. And, you know, I want to just peel back the estate planning piece. And, you know, in the light of COVID-19 and an upcoming election, you know, what's going on? What are you doing right now? And how are you doing it? Because, you know, we office in the same building with you, and I thank you because you brought me there. So thank you. And I marvel at how you were able to continue your business operations and be able to physically distance from your clients.
Yeah, Bob, March was a wild ride, I have to say. I think I took 2 days off in March, and a 10 or an 11-hour day was a short day for me. We had to pivot our operations very quickly to protect the population that we serve. Many of our clients are slightly older or do have health concerns. And the last thing any of us wanted was to be within the trace back chain of if any of our clients, you know, contracted COVID, we certainly didn't want to be in that line of it could have happened at our firm. So
Right.
Knock on wood, our whole entire team, we have a team of 14. We have all been healthy. All of our immediate families have been healthy. I've been in the office every day. Most of the other staff have been working primarily remotely, but I keep joking with people. The only 2 good things I've seen as the pandemic outcome have been, the first is we've all finally properly learned how to wash our hands, Bob. And the second is it has caused people to realize the importance of estate planning. It has brought to the forefront of many people's thoughts what would happen if I became seriously ill for a significant period of time? Who would make my medical decisions? Who would have the legal authority to pay my bills, take care of my household, manage my business? Very serious things like that. And even, what if the worst did happen? What if I did pass away? So we've seen a real uptick in the mindfulness of the population in general of having estate plans, which is great because statistically fewer than 50% of people even have powers of attorney, medical directives, or wills. And these documents are really important. If you don't have a healthcare power of attorney and you were to become incapacitated to the point where you couldn't direct your your care yourself, our legislature has picked the people who get to be your medical decision makers. Well, those may or may not be the people you would pick, but that's who you got.
Exactly.
And even worse, if you were not able to handle financial matters and you had no power of attorney or perhaps a trust in place, I have no other recourse as a lawyer. I am going to have to go to court and get a judge to appoint someone as your legal conservator. Well, listen, I'm a lawyer, Bob. I like going to court. It's fun for me, right? I get paid a lot of money to get in my car and go to court, which actually has changed because Maricopa County court system is all by virtual hearings now, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
I don't have to get in the car, and clients don't pay us to drive to court, which is actually a positive outcome that we've seen from coronavirus, is some efficiencies being built into the legal system. But nobody wants to be in a court situation. It's not a good place to be. If you could just get your documents in order and keep them in order. If you did them 5 or more years ago, it's time for a review because tax laws have changed, family dynamics change. You need to get them in place and keep them in place.
You know, you bring up a really good point, and I've used this adage here on the show, and that is, if you fail to plan, then you plan to fail.
Absolutely,
and you
Bob.
know, you really need to do that, and certainly during COVID times, you talked about March. Right, we learned about these ventilators. We learned about people getting on them and never getting off of them.
Yes.
And you know, the fear of me or someone you love getting sick and not being able to make those decisions should prompt you to go ahead and do those things that you were just talking about.
Absolutely. And you know, in the beginning of this, it's called a novel virus for a reason, right? We knew a lot less then than we know now about transmission and avoiding and mitigating your risk. But, you know, we've kept working the whole time because we understand the importance of estate planning documents. Bob, we literally were having clients drive up to our office, and we were doing all of our appointments and consultations virtually through Zoom, phone calls, video conferencing. But when it came time to sign the documents, you need a witness, you need a notary. It needs to be done with your lawyer. It needs to be done properly to be legally in effect. So we literally had the protocol. Clients would pull up. We had designated parking spaces. They would call the office. Our team would go out with gloves, sanitized clipboards, sanitized pens, masks. We made our clients wear masks. Clients stayed in their vehicle, rolled down the windows. We would stay physically distanced, passed in the clipboards, have them sign everything with our notaries and witnesses in the parking lots. I kept joking. It's like, would you like fries with your will, Bob? But our clients loved it. It was fast. It was efficient. Finally,
I
got
actually
to the point.
watched one.
I know.
I saw one.
We probably did more than, I don't even know how many, at least more than 50 estate planning signings in that fashion.
Wow.
Because we understand the importance. I've literally gone to a client's home. She was undergoing chemo. She's been a longtime client, and she did not want to even get in her car and go anywhere, and her doctors advised her not to. So one Sunday afternoon, we'd made arrangements. I physically drove to her home, put a sanitized plastic container down with her documents, and she made arrangement to have the notary and the witnesses that she knew had been socially distancing come to her home, and I was on the phone with her while she was signing. So the level of creativity that this has taken and the amount of time to keep things going, but we have stayed busy. We've been very blessed that people trust us with these really important matters, and we've been creatively solving problems and getting it done.
And I marvel at it. I kind of chuckle, and I know you do too, but I mean, at the same time, I mean, we have to safeguard this vulnerable population. Like you said, the majority of them are a little bit older than we are, and we want to make sure that they're safe. I would imagine you probably have passed out a lot of pens with your phone number and your logo on them. Here, use this pen, and and you can keep it, by the way.
Oh yeah,
right?
no, we're
we
not.
We're
not. When a lot of restaurants will have the clean pen container and the dirty pen container. If you've touched it, it's yours. You're leaving the office with it.
No, I love how you have pivoted, how you've evolved, and you said there's a lot of good that's come out of this. And I've had doctors here on the show talking about telemedicine who never practiced telemedicine, and part of the reason why they didn't do it was because reimbursement was not 100% of what they would get for an inpatient visit, which now it's 100%. And two, you really needed to use a HIPAA compliant platform, and now you can use FaceTime, you can use anything to communicate with your patient. And for you, I mean, it has to be a lifesaver that you don't have to make that trip down to the courthouse, and then be
fantastic.
around all those people, and then when you go into court, there's maybe 5, 10, 40 cases before yours, and you're just sitting there, just waiting and rotting. And now I would imagine, and correct me if I'm wrong, if you have a hearing scheduled for 10 o'clock, your hearing starts at 10 o'clock.
Yeah, it's definitely become more efficient. It's more cost effective for the client, which I appreciate, and it's easier. Particularly we do handle a lot of guardianship and conservatorship work. And so when the person who's the subject of the guardianship conservatorship proceeding has difficulty with travel, but yet they would still like to hear what's going on and participate in the proceeding and give their testimony and have their say, it's much easier on them physically and emotionally. So I think it's actually become a great process, and I'm hoping that the court will continue that. The court had to stop all hearings at one point in April, and that was interesting. So we had a big, about 2 weeks of just no hearings. And then they very quickly pivoted to an online video platform, got caught up right away. So now with us in our court proceedings, things seem to be moving along very efficiently.
If there's another good thing that came out of this pandemic is, thank God it happened in 2020 and not in 1990.
I mean, have said
we have all these tools.
Many times.
Well, It's hard to believe, Stephanie, we're here at halftime here at Health Futures. Stick around. I've got Stephanie Bivens in the house. We got the second half coming right up.
Now back to Health Futures, taking stock in you. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Cypress Home Care Solutions, Bob Roth.
Welcome back. You're listening to Health Futures, taking stock in you. I'm your host, Bob Roth, and if you're just tuning in, we're in our second half here, and we're coming at you live from the Scottsdale Air Park. It's October 2nd, 2020. And I've got Stephanie Bivens here in the house. She is with the Bivens and Associates law firm, and we've been talking about estate planning and elder law. We've been talking about probate and trust administration, and she also does special needs planning. And we may get into that, but I want to get back to really talking about estate planning and elder law. What changes have been brought on because of COVID-19? The Secure Act of this year, and possible future changes because of the election that's coming up. And wow, I mean, our world is just spinning.
It has been a wild ride. Definitely. And for those of us in financial services and in the estate planning arena, even before COVID became declared the pandemic, we had the Secure Act sort of drop in January, slightly out of the blue, and it became effective January 1. And it has...
What is the Secure Act?
Yeah, so the Secure Act is the biggest change to retirement account legislation than this country has had in decades. And from the estate planning side, it really changes how the beneficiaries on IRAs, retirement accounts, can take their inherited IRAs. So if you have an IRA and you're contributing, the Secure Act, you used to have to start taking required minimum distributions beginning at age 70 and a half. That is now increased to age 72. So that's really the big change for the account owner. But the biggest change under the Secure Act is actually not for the account owner, but for the persons that will inherit the account when the owner dies. So prior to this year, so 2019 and earlier, when an account owner died, if an individual was named as a beneficiary, that individual would have the option of either taking the retirement account in lump sum and having all of the income tax, it's called IRD, income with respect to decedent, paid all at one time, or a more tax efficient process would be to take and roll over that IRA into an inherited IRA. And then you could stretch out the required minimum distributions based on your individual life expectancy. So it was a very tax efficient way to leave a retirement account, let's say, to an adult child. Maybe that child's only 30, 40 years old. They're going to have a very long life expectancy. They can take just a little bit of money out over time and let that asset grow income tax free. Well, Bob, a lot of that changed with the Secure Act. So now there's only 5 classes of individuals who can inherit and stretch out that inherited IRA over their life expectancy. And that's a spouse. The spouse still has the lifetime stretch. A disabled individual, a chronically ill individual, a minor child. So in Arizona, you're a minor if you're under the age of 18. At 18, then the 10 years start. So you get a little bit more than 10 years. Or someone that is within 10 years, not more than 10 years younger than the decedent. So siblings, for example. If I had a sibling and I left my retirement account by beneficiary designation to my sibling and they're only 5 years younger than me, then they can still take and stretch over their life. But everybody else, Bob, most adult children,
I was just going to say, adult children got the short end of the stick.
Absolutely. They all must take out all of the
taxes.
Money, all of the money
right.
out of the retirement account has to be zeroed out within 10 years of the date of the owner's death, which means now there's going to be a massive acceleration of the income tax that's getting paid on all of this money that is going to pass over the next several decades from boomers and retirees who stockpiled their savings during their lifetime into these tax-deferred retirement vehicles. So it's the way the government is accelerating an income tax boon, but it is really impacting estate planning in the area of how do you now select who your beneficiaries are.
Sure.
And it's more important than ever for people not only to, when they're doing their estate planning, look at their legal documents, but you have to look at every single asset, account, policy that you own, including your retirement accounts, to double check that your beneficiary designations are consistent with the plan.
Sure.
You know, it is what it is. Some people are going to have to pull it out within 10 years. But if you're charitably inclined, maybe you want to leave the money portion of your estate that you were planning to anyway coming out of your retirement accounts, because 100% of that goes to the charity,
right,
as opposed to the family. So there's a lot of tax planning that can go into estate planning, particularly in light of the Secure Act. But the big takeaway for people is look at your beneficiary designations, look at your estate plan, make sure they are coordinated, and seek advice of counsel if you have any questions.
You know, this has been an education session for me. I was unaware of what that act was all about. And I would imagine the majority of people in our community, unless they're in the financial planning business like you are,
yes,
they don't know that.
Yeah, and the Secure Act, because it is such a major change to long-standing tax code, was a huge deal, right? This was implemented in the mid-January. It was effective back to January 1 of this year for anyone who died January 1, well, after December 31 of 2019. It's technically what the law says. And it was big news, and it was everywhere. And then the pandemic hit. And then, you know, we haven't heard as much about the Secure Act. And now we have this pandemic, right? And everybody's dealing with that. And so the Secure Act kind of got, you know, pushed down the news cycle.
You know, it's interesting. It's kind of like the fires in Australia.
Yes.
You know, whatever happened with that? That was all in the news. I'm not trying to make light of it. It was a big deal.
Yeah.
But the pandemic all of a sudden took front page. And
of course. And the pandemic, of course, has impacted everybody in every phase of their life. It doesn't matter who you are, where you live, what you do for a living, what tax bracket you're in. It has affected everybody all over the globe to one degree or another. So, of course, that's been in the forefront.
You know, if people told me that in 2020, back in the 90s or early 2000s, people would be wearing masks, I would be like, wow, we have a real bad pollution problem, right? I mean,
right.
You would have thought that would have been the reason why people masked.
Yeah.
But it's this virus.
Yeah, it's been interesting, as we talked in the prior segment, our office, we've changed a lot of our protocol to protect our team members, our community, our clients. I think all businesses have. Everybody's operating slightly differently. There's certainly some positives, but there's a lot of negatives. I think my firm, we've handled 7 or 8 post-death probate and trust administrations because the individual died with COVID or is a complicating factor, cause of death with COVID. So early on, we were getting some really, close to home phone calls. We lost some clients to it, and that really takes you back and makes you think. And that's part of why I've been such a huge advocate all of these years to get people to think ahead, put their documents in order, because I can clean a mess up afterwards. That's what we do as lawyers, right? If people don't plan, there's a plan. We'll get your stuff from point A to point B. The problem is the chaos that ensues, right?
And the cost.
It's the cost, the time delays, the angst of family. So I'm just a huge advocate of getting people to take care of things ahead of time.
So I'm going to start this conversation because we're coming up really close to the end of the third segment. And you talk about think ahead.
Yes.
All right. So we have an election, and it's maybe the biggest one of our lifetime, and maybe the biggest one of our country's lifetime.
Agreed.
And talk about thinking ahead. If the White House does change, and certainly the Senate changes, there's going to be a lot of change, and especially when it comes to estate planning. So, I would imagine that you are starting to have these conversations now and starting to think outside the box in terms of how can you best prepare your clients for this change. Now, I know we're coming up on the break, and I remember when my family went through estate planning back in the 80s and 90s, we were all talking about planning for this death tax. And we took out life insurance policies on my dad and mom to make sure there was enough to pay the death tax so the inheritance would all come through back to us.
Correct.
So I'll leave it at that, because when we come back, I want your mind and your thought process in terms of what are you doing right now to prepare for this change. You've been listening to Health Futures, Taking Stock in You. I'm your host, Bob Roth. I've got Stephanie Bivens in the house. We got one more segment. Stick around. We're going to talk about a very important subject matter. What if the White House changes? Be right back.
Now back to Health Futures, taking stock in you. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Cypress Home Care Solutions, Bob Roth.
Welcome back. You're listening to Health Futures, Taking Stock in You. I'm your host, Bob Roth. And if you're just tuning in, I got Stephanie Bivens here in the studio. She's with the Bivens and Associates. And I left the most important matter here for the end. I'm glad you're tuning in because we're talking about planning, and I use that old adage: if you fail to plan, then you plan to fail. And you know what? We have an election year, and a lot could change, especially as it relates to estate planning. And I think I've teed it up, and I know that you, Stephanie, are probably having lots of conversations. And I want to just say, look, the election's November 3rd. I think we all know we're not going to know the answer. But at the same time, if you're planning, you have to have a plan in place to execute before December 31st, because a lot could change by January 1st, 2021.
Yeah, exactly, Bob. And so, I'll just preface this with everything is speculative, right? We don't know who's going to win. We don't know if any proposals by the candidates for change will actually be implemented. It's going to depend on who's, if the Democrats do get the White House and the Senate, well, then we certainly know there's a greater change. But we don't know even then if it's going to be as proposed.
Right.
So, with the, if the White House stays the same, I think the consensus is we're going to see the existing tax structure as is. We're not going to see major upswing in tax, major down, we probably know where we're at. I don't think the estate tax exemption or exclusion amount is going to change. Right now, under the current tax code, each individual in our country can die and leave up to $11.58 million to their heirs, free of federal estate tax.
And if it's two, then it's 23
correct.
million, right?
Right. Times two if you're a married couple, because each individual gets their personal $11.58 million. So federal estate tax is not something that everybody walking down the street has to be concerned with,
right?
Certainly. And the current estate tax legislation is scheduled to sunset back in the year 2026, back down to the $5 million, which with index inflations would be $5.26 million. So that is scheduled to happen anyway if Congress doesn't change our tax code with regard to the estate tax. But under the Biden proposal, that sunset back would be immediate, is what that proposal is saying. So immediately the estate and gift tax would go from $11.58 million per person beginning in 2021, if what they're proposing comes to fruition. Right. Again, it's all speculative.
Exactly.
Back in half. So right now what we're seeing is a lot of talk among tax planners, financial advisors, estate planning attorneys about how soon could they get this done. And there's a belief out there, Bob, that if it did come into play in 2021, it could be retroactive, effective back January 1 of 2021. So what that means is...
And that's not unprecedented.
Absolutely
they've done
not.
stuff like that in the past.
Absolutely not. So what that means is we may be in an extraordinarily tight window for people who want to take advantage of the $11.58 million gift and estate tax limit in the year 2020. So be ready, folks. If you have a taxable estate, you may want to be talking to your estate planning attorney, your professional advisors about, does it make sense to use your gift exclusion to make a large gift or transfer to family? And we do use all kinds of variety of trusts and sale agreements and outright gifts. There's a lot of different ways to achieve it depending on goals and objectives. But I do know some wealthier families are thinking about, we may be in a tight window after the election, and they're already scheduling appointments with their attorneys about what should we be considering, and should we be considering a gift, because this may be the last window if we have sweeping changes. The other big issue that I see from an estate tax standpoint in the Biden proposal, and this will affect everyone, not just people who are of significant wealth, the 10 to 6 to plus $1 million estates. But there's actually a proposal in there to eliminate the step up in basis.
Whoa, I did not know that.
This is not getting talked about.
No way.
Yes.
That's a problem.
It's a huge problem. So when I say step up in basis for the listeners, what this means is typically when somebody dies and you inherit, let's say, the home, the person who owned the home who died, let's say they paid $100,000 for that house and they owned it for a very long time, and now it's worth $500,000 when you inherit it. There was $400,000 worth of appreciation of that home during the original owner's lifetime. If the owner had sold it, there might be capital gains tax on that appreciation. But because the owner died owning that property and now it's yours, you take the $500,000 as your basis. So when you later sell that property, you don't pay any capital gains tax on the appreciation of that property during the original owner's lifetime.
Wow, that's big.
This is huge,
that is
Bob.
Really big.
And so the concern, of course, is under the current proposal, it's extraordinarily vague, but there is reason to believe that it would be considered a tax due whether or not the property is actually sold. So it's going to be deemed sale, which means if you get the property and there was $400,000 worth of gain during the original owner's lifetime, you're going to have a capital gains tax.
Or you're going to have to sell it.
You're going to have to sell it, or you're going to have to come up with money.
Yeah.
Depending on whether it's considered immediately sold, even though it isn't, or whether when it is actually sold, you have to go back. This legislation has been proposed twice, Bob, to Congress in prior history. And one time it was actually enacted, but it was so unwieldy, it never went into place. And another time it was so wildly unpopular, it got repealed. So I don't know that this is going to have legs because obviously it creates huge problems for families inheriting illiquid assets, but being faced with a tax where you have to have liquidity to pay the tax. So it's going to be really interesting to see. I think that's the sleeper in the Biden proposal. This has been a huge issue in other countries. The UK had big issues with this for many, many years. A lot of other countries because families were forced to sell the family home.
Well, it's kind of like what happened with Joe Robbie. You know, the family, when Joe Robbie died, back then there was a hefty estate tax, and they had to sell the Miami Dolphins and the stadium. So in order to pay the tax.
Yeah, and
that's not what they wanted to do.
And the pragmatic problem is, right? Imagine you inherit a home that's been owned for 20 years in the family. Who knows what grandma paid for that house? Where are the records to establish grandma's basis? So there's been a real pragmatic issue in the past, and that's really because it's been unpopular, because the pragmatic challenges, the taxing authorities can't even figure out what the original basis is. How do you fairly assess a tax? But that's a sleeper that's in there. And from my perspective, as somebody who actually works with families and trust and bank companies to settle estates, that could be a huge challenge.
It could be.
Yeah. And again, this is all speculative.
Sure it is.
And of course, there's a lot of income tax proposed changes. I'm not going to go into that. I'm not a tax advisor. I'm focusing on the estate proposals.
Also transactions, capital gains could very well go back to 38% from 20%.
Well, they're talking about eliminating the 1031 exchange altogether, Bob.
Wow.
Yeah. If for income earners, when there's more than $1 million, the proposal is you're going to have no 1031.
Stephanie Bivens, how do we get a hold of you real quick?
Bivenslaw.com or 480-922-1010.
Thank you for being on. Make it a great day. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, Bob.
There's no place like home. You've been listening to Bob Roth's Health Futures. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call Cypress Home Care Solutions at 602-264-8009. That's 602-264-8009. Or visit cypresshomecare.com. Be sure to join Health Futures with Bob Roth every Friday at noon, right here on Money Radio 1510 and 105.3